Hi everyone, this is the game Daniel versus Kundan. Let's get into it. Okay, Sicilian was played and then Bishop c4 on move 2. I mean, eh, it's done before. It's not really a main opening. I would highly recommend White play Knight f3 move 2 and then just go for d4 and play an open Sicilian. I think the younger you start playing the open Sicilian, the better. Don't try and avoid it by playing closed Sicilians or anything like that. But bishop c4 is not a good idea, I don't think, because the bishop's just a target here. It allows your opponent to get a quick d5 in with tempo on your bishop. So here e6 was played straight away, and the threat is just d5, and it's very annoying. Here, yeah, probably knight c3 is required to prevent d5. You can't really prevent it. Eventually, black will get it in. White didn't even try and stop d5. He went knight f3, and now black just goes d5. And after takes, bishop check, bishop d7, and a few trades, black has now got the center. You know, black is completely equalized, and I'm very happy with black's position. Although the engine seems to think white's doing okay here. The engine doesn't like that last move, taking with a knight. The engine prefers to take with the queen. And that makes sense as well. You've got a pawn on c5. You want your knight sitting on c6 behind that pawn, and stopping your opponent from bashing out d4 in the center. Taking with a knight, I don't think makes the most sense, because your opponent then has this d4 push, fighting back for the center whenever he wants. Whereas with queen takes, yeah, you're. I mean, I guess it's true. White could immediately play d4 if he wants to. However, if he doesn't, the knight, wants to be on c6. So, the knight doesn't, I don't think it really wants to sit on d7 in this position. Okay, so white castle, looking to get a quick rook e1 in, and also has this d4 idea. Black just played knight 6. d3. I really think white should be taking a piece of the center here. d4 is the idea, but I mean, why not just rook e1? Just check. I mean, the idea is after bishop e7, then you do something like queen d2, queen e2, sorry, and your opponent can't castle. Their king gets stranded in the center and is unable to castle. This is a very common idea, doubling with queen and rook on the file to strand your opponent's king in the center of the board. And this is the one downside to black's position, is the fact that white could do this rook e1, queen e2 idea, and black has some. After these moves, black has quite a bit of rearranging to do to try and fix his position up a little bit. If the knight was sitting here on c6, it'd be defending the bishop on e7, and the king would just be able to castle. So there's another reason why taking with the knight just wasn't so good. It definitely wanted to be on c6. Lucky for black, white didn't go for any of this. He didn't even throw the check in. He just played d3. And I think that was a missed opportunity for white to, even though he's given black a good position in the center, because black took back with the wrong knight, white had an opportunity, which he's missed. Okay, so d3, bishop e7, and now black's going to get to safety, rook e1, and he gets to safety just in time. Now, I like black's position now. Black's just, he's fully equalized and actually is pushing for the advantage, and white's the one that's going to be playing defensively in this position. So c4 was played, which strikes back in the center, so I mean, you can't say that's bad. If black takes it, you've got an open center. The problem is black is fully developed and white isn't, so that gives black the advantage in an open center. d4 is also the move you're looking for here, just planting an advanced center pawn here. The biggest problem is the bishops. Black has a dark squared bishop on the same color square as his pawns. Whoops. So this is a bad bishop, and white's bishop by comparison is a fairly good bishop. But the extra advantage you gain from all that extra space in the center is surely worth the bad bishops. But I could understand the decision to take. It makes perfect sense, given black's far better developed. Unfortunately, his pieces aren't developed on the best squares. This knight desperately wants to be here. Okay, so where are we? So knight b6. I mean, yeah, he really did want to get it out of the way. The problem is it has no future on b6. After the pawn eventually goes to b3, this knight is just silly and it's going to have to do some more rearranging. With your opponent having no way to defend the d4 square, I mean, yeah, I kind of want to like find some time in this game, not straight away, but to play knight back and then knight into c6 and put it on the square it was supposed to be in the first place, so that you can jump into the d4 square. So yeah, this is probably equal. Even though black has the advantage of development, white's fully undeveloped. Black's knight is just in a terrible spot, and he's got a bad bishop versus good bishop position. Okay, so knight b6 was played, queen c2. That's good, I like that. Bishop d6, so just trying to get that bishop onto a more active diagonal. Knight g5. What? Okay, this is no good. Knight g5. It doesn't do anything. It's not even threatening mate. It ties the knight down the defense of h7, but your opponent can just gain a free move, can just create an escape hole for his king for free, because the knight will then have to retreat. So knight g5 is not the way to play it. With the center completely open, white needs to develop as soon as possible. And the engine's even, suggesting a move like knight c3 here, or was a second ago. Does this not give up a free pawn? Or is there a tactic? There is a tactic. Bishop g5 is strong, apparently, with the idea, I think you pile on the pin piece with discovered attack on the queen, and this pawn is going to be a little bit loose. So you can sack that pawn, and because you're fully developed and your pieces are in much better places than your opponent's, yeah, that would have been strong. It's hard to find that. What he played was, I mean, another move which is quite sensible is just b3. Just throw the bishop on the long diagonal, and then you're constantly hitting this knight for the rest of the game, threatening to just wreck black's pawn structure if this queen ever moves off this the defense of the knight, which it wants to do. It wants to jump into c7 or something. So if you can get this bishop on b2, you can really put black under intense pressure. So b3, knight c3, they're both very good. This is terrible. I'm sorry to say, it's just a wasted move. So black just hit the knight straight away, and the knight had to run back, and now it's black's turn. So we go back here, it's white's turn, and white's got the time to develop his pieces. And now after these two moves, we get the exact same position almost, but it's now black's turn. Free move for black. Okay, so sorry, I was just reading a text. Queen c7. So yeah, now black has the time to get his queen developed, and yeah, b3 is coming just a bit too late. This bishop needed to be on here a little bit earlier so that the queen couldn't get to c7. Rook e8, and now the rook, yeah, he doesn't have time to play bishop b2. His rook's on pre, so he trades rooks off, and now, yeah, maybe bishop b2 now is the way to do it. There's no danger of mate down here, because the knight's guarding it. The knight does look like it's overworked. It's defending e1 and h2, but there's no tactic there, because after bishop take, for example, bishop b2. If bishop takes here, you can just safely take it with the knight. There's no mate, because the knight ends up jumping back into here at the end of it all. So yeah, bishop b2 was needed here, but instead white, getting a bit worried about his back rank, decides to create an escape square for his king. He's created it the right way. He definitely wants to play g3 to create an escape square, because your opponent doesn't have a light squared bishop. However, it wasn't necessary, and developing this bishop would have been far better. So now rook e6 was played. Yeah, just trying to think, what should black's plan be? It's hard to tell what black's plan should be here. How does he make progress? What does he do? He's got this really bad bishop, and his knight is terrible. So even though white has this horrible development problem with this open center, because black's pieces are so awkwardly placed, it's not actually advantageous for black. Once white gets fully developed, his pieces are just going to be better. Maybe black needs to, reroute this knight from this silly square, knight d7, and then jump it into e5 or something, and try and trade some pieces off, and hope that his queen and rook control the central files at the end of it all. So knight bd7 probably. Then you can look to chuck the bishop into e5 or the knight into e5 and try and get some trades going. The idea is to trade off the minor pieces and have the rook and queen controlling those center files at the end, and gives him an advantage. Instead, he went rook e6, which I don't think does anything really, and white should just take this opportunity to develop the bishop. He didn't. He developed his knight instead, which I'm not entirely convinced that's the best way to do it. I mean, it does eye the b5 square and the d5 square. Not that it's going to go into d5. But I don't know. I'd like to leave open the option of the knight jumping to d2 instead of going to c3. I think it probably always wants to go to c3, but this bishop's strong. I think developing this bishop first, because we're not sure where this knight is actually going, but I think we're absolutely certain where this bishop is going. It's definitely going to b2. So knight c3 was played, queen e7, and yeah, just bishop b2. White's position is starting to get organized and is starting to look pretty decent, and black's pieces are still awkwardly placed. So a6 was played. I guess that's just keeping the knight out of b5 for now. It's now up to white to find a plan, to find a way to improve his position, and there's a few different choices here. I mean, because black has control of the central files with this queen and rook, challenging that would be a good idea. So a move like king f1 it really comes to mind here. The idea is simply to defend the e1 square so the rook can come across and trade off some of these major pieces. Once the rooks get traded off, the queen can then challenge the queen, and white's just got better minor pieces for the ending, especially with the good bishop versus bad bishop situation. He didn't. He went knight h4, and I mean, I guess the idea is to jump into to f5. It does leave things open down here. Not sure anything comes of it. I don't think this was the right idea. I think trying to trade your bad rook for your opponent's good rook is the plan. King f1 for sure. Okay, so knight h4 was played. Rook e1 check. Okay, so black's doing it for us. Okay, thanks Kundan. No, I don't think black should be doing this. That rook is far better than white's counterpart. The idea would be to trade off some of your lousy minor pieces for his good minor pieces. You know, a move like bishop e5, for instance, just get that pin going. And this knight definitely needs rerouting. Your knight d7 also comes to mind. I mean, you gotta be worried about knight jumping into here, and there might be some annoying things you need to worry about there. So bishop e5 sort of counteracts all those immediately. Just putting this pin. It's not really a pin, but you definitely do want to try and trade these bishops off if you get a chance. What to do with this knight is the biggest issue. I have no idea. You know, knight there to there to there or there or something. I don't know. It's going to take a long time to get that knight to the correct square. It probably should never have gone to b6 in the first place. Okay, so yeah, we got black is helping white here by trading off a good rook for a bad rook. That was black's best piece, that rook. That was amazing, and now it's gone. And yeah, the position looks fairly equal, probably more comfortable for white, because white's minor pieces are just better. Good bishop versus bad bishop. Not sure what to do here, but yeah, knight d7 was played. I think black's finally realized this knight has no future on b6 and needs to be rerouted somewhere else. So the queen's gone and charged into f5, but that gives up the second rank to black. I can't imagine that being the right idea. I really want to, yeah, I mean, like queen d3 would be much better because you're hitting the bishop and you're still controlling all these second rank squares. By just simply abandoning the second rank, you're allowing black's queen to get to a good spot. I mean, Yeah, queen d3 I like. The engine's suggesting knight d5. I'd be a little bit concerned about that pawn that ends up on d5 getting a bit overextended. That would be my main concern, because it's well and truly blockaded on the dark squares. I wouldn't want to do this, even though the engine's suggesting it. Queen d3 is it. Engine's also suggesting things like f4, but that leaves this king very exposed. Queen d3 is the move. I say queen f5. That just gives up the second rank. And yeah, well done to black. He just immediately just bang hops onto it, and now it's very uncomfortable for white. How do you handle this position? It's looking bad. I mean, that one move, vacating the second ranking, letting black have it, has completely turned this position around now. White ended up playing bishop back to e1. Sorry, a1. Yeah, I mean, where else was it going to go? And it's just uncomfortable. So now g6 was played. Whoa, whoa. I mean, that just is asking for sack. I don't know if the sack does anything, but yeah, knight sack here straight away. I mean, you wouldn't play a move like this unless you put a lot of analytical work into it, and you calculated it out and made sure that this sack doesn't actually do anything. The piece for 2 pawns, surely this, with the bishop on this diagonal and this knight ready to pounce into here, it looks like black is toast. G6 looks like a terrible blunder, and it's forced. Obviously going to H8 is terrible, walking straight into a discovered pin and having a million pieces hitting F6. It's just going to lose straight away. The king has to go to F8. But yeah, gosh, I mean, knight d5 now just looks so good for white. In fact, I'm looking at the engine analysis, and it says white is almost 4 pawns up in material, and suggesting the best move for black is actually to sack the bishop. So, like, you look at some of these ideas. For example, if the knight tries to take on d5, white just plays this, and you're check, and you're hitting the knight and hitting this, and it's all over. White's just easily winning this position. You can't play like knight e7 because of queen takes queen, of course. It's if he doesn't take it, what does he do? He has no move. Like bishop e7, for instance, you can just bang this off, and you just win your piece back. It's just easy. And now white's just 2 pawns up. Easy win for white. This a pawn's on pre, but if the queen runs over here, this is on pre, and you end up with 3 united pass pawns and an exposed king. No, g6, massive blunder, and white, luckily for black, white missed it. Knight takes here would have just smashed black off the board. That would just been game over straight away. Okay, so white retreated, and now the position's equal again. Bishop e5, yeah, okay, finally doing something about that terrible bishop. Now, according to the engine, the only move which is decent is this one here. And the idea is simple discovered attack. You discovered attack on the bishop and hitting the rook itself. Yeah, the bishop can't take the bishop because you grab the queen. And while the queen is wasting time moving, then you can trade bishops off. You really got no choice but to trade the bishops off. Everything else, though, is bad. So what happened was white tried the same idea, but not by bringing it back to b1. He threw it into e4. And unfortunately, calculation-wise, this doesn't work because the knight can just grab on e5 and e4 here, saving his queen and taking a piece. And after this move here, black can now just take this here. And after queen takes here, it's looking better for black. The queen is just very strong, and this knight is starting to infiltrate. It can jump into d3. And you've got this very annoying check on e1, which it hits the king and covers the f3 square at the same time. We're not going to do that. Though instead of playing knight e5, black tried a switch and zug. He thought, I'll go knight here, hitting the queen, and then while he's wasting time getting the queen out of danger, I'm going to grab the bishop. And that kind of looks okay. I mean, this queen can come over here and defend the bishop, but what white found was really good. He just basically said, go ahead, take my bishop. We're going to take advantage of your exposed king. So he grabbed the b7 pawn, and after the knight took the bishop, queen fork. Really great stuff by Daniel. Excellent, excellent play. So the king moves, and then he grabs the knight, and now it's equal again. It's equal because the queen can grab on a2. And now this is a tricky ending. Like, this is not an easy ending. This is quite complex. It's dead equal, but complicated. Now, white chose to take the c5 pawn, which according to the engine is dead equal. I do not like this because black is left with this outside pass pawn here, and white's got this c pawn here. It's probably equal, but if you think about it a bit more carefully, these two pawns are isolated and therefore quite weak, where these two pawns are, they're next to each other, they're united. So the idea is you don't want to trade an isolated pawn for a pawn which is part of a chain. What you want to do is you want to like drop your queen back to e3 and just keep that pawn safe. And now this knight, if it ever manages to make its way over to the queen side, could run rampant. It can jump in here and start harassing these pawns. Whereas white's two pawns are actually, quite comfortable, quite perfectly placed. But maybe if black can get a pawn to a knight to d4, he can force that trade of pawn for pawn anyway. But definitely black has to tread carefully here. So white took the pawn, black took this here, and now it's just a case of finding the right squares for your pieces. And I really like the move queen d5. I think this is very strong because it stops this knight from moving. Oh no, it doesn't actually. It can still sit here. But yeah, maybe queen d5 is not so good. My first thought was queen d5, but after queen d5 you can't actually advance your pawn because this queen is pinning it. On the plus side though, this pawn can't advance because you just take it. And you are putting that extra pressure on this pawn here. So I'm thinking of something like knight f3, and if the knight takes your knight, you might be able to go check and then grab it. Just looking at it, the queen can take your knight. Takes, and then this pawn will win. So knight f3 is not an issue. Like I said, complicated ending. Even I'm messing this up trying to analyze it. The engine, according to the engine, just about everything is dead equal. So you have to kind of do this yourself. You can't just rely on the engine to understand a position like this. So Daniel played queen d4 in the end. You can understand why. He wants to get out of the way of his pawn, but he doesn't want his pawn to be pinned to his queen. He wants to start advancing it. The problem is it doesn't put black under any pressure whatsoever. Black can just start marching this a pawn down the board if he wants to. And this knight can always jump to e6 and hit the queen with tempo if it needs to. It's not the best square for the queen. c6 is another suggestion by the engine, throwing the queen onto c6, because there you are threatening to just take the a pawn and defend your c pawn, and you're getting out of the way of your c pawn so you can march it up. But normally putting your queen in front of the pawn that you want to send up the board is not a good idea. So you can understand why he didn't choose to go for it. Okay, so after queen d4, according to the engine, black is 3 points of material up. Black just simply needs to play a5 here, and white's in deep trouble because if you just follow the moves, like if you play c5 now, he just goes a4, and we can't stop this pawn. Well, I mean, you have got the queen guarding the queening square, but yeah, I mean, if you just try and straight out race it like this, and you just keep racing, there's a very annoying queen check here, which forks the pawn and the king. And you see black's king is actually less exposed than white's now on this diagonal. So back here, you have to play something like queen a7 to take away the b6 square and also keep the a pawn guarded. But yeah, there's still this move here, queen d5, which just takes the pawn. But that just trades pawns, doesn't it? So yeah, the queen doesn't want to take. Maybe this is still drawn. Oh no, wait, hang on, no, h3. Ouch, ouch. King f1, and then a2. Yeah, and then the threat is queen check and then get a new queen. But c7 is interesting though. Yeah, I could analyze this for ages. It's such a tough ending. Let's get into what actually played. A5, it turns out, is winning, but not without a ton of complications. Black just played queen b7 check, and according to the score sheet, white played king f1 here, and unfortunately that results in the moves making no sense later on. So I had to backtrack. It took me ages. I eventually worked out the king must have gone to g1 because, yeah, otherwise the score sheet makes no sense. And so a5, c5, queen c7 was played, queen c3, and then, yeah, knight there. Though, yeah, knight e4 is clearly better because you're forking the queen and the pawn. He played knight e6 instead, which gives white this opportunity to complicate things with c6. I mean, that knight d8 still wins it, doesn't it? There's not much you can do about that. So yeah, it doesn't matter that he didn't play knight d4. So this knight just decided to try and get back into the game because it was sitting on the edge doing nothing the whole time. And the queen took the pawn, and obviously taking queens is absolutely terrible. Knights really struggle against rook pawns. It's another reason why you didn't want to go into a c pawn versus a pawn fight, was because if the queens ever did swap off, it was an easy win for black, the rook pawn. The knight just can't handle the rook pawn. Not very well anyway. So queen chucked into here, queen f5, back you go. Then queen b5. And this is the reason why king f1 couldn't have been played, because apparently white now played knight h4, and if the king was on f1, it was check. How to play this is tricky. I don't know why the knight's going out at h4. The white desperately needs to do something about this pawn here. And so, like, maneuvering the knight over to the queen side, like knight d2 or knight e1, so that you can get over to that queen side and try and do something about this pawn. I think that was absolutely necessary here. Running it out to the side of the board where it's going nowhere is a surefire way to lose this. And now it's actually a pretty easy win for black from now on. If the knight had have gone to, say d2 for instance, then there is potential there for white to get back into this game. Maybe e1's a little bit better. The problem with d2 is you can't go to b1, you have to go to c4, but then your knight might get pinned and it gets a bit tricky. You go to e1 and then you can go to c2 and you can keep this a1 square guarded, and you might be able to put up some sort of defense. Even, I mean, knight e1, knight d2 would have been much better. Anything really better than knight h4. So yeah, black just cruises through now. And yeah, this doesn't make any sense at all. Apparently, according to the score sheet, white played this now. Just free queen. And then the game was definitely over. I mean, here, white, I know it looks weird. White just moved his knight out to here. Probably the best thing white can do is just go straight back again and just quickly, like crazy, get over to that queen side and stop that pawn. That would have been the best move, just basically moving back where you just came from. Instead, he played queen d3, and I'm not going to bother analyzing the rest of the game. Yeah, except for this part here, where black decided, oh, this pawn can't be stopped. I'm just going to sack my queen for this knight, and he didn't need to do that. Maybe he was just trying to simplify the position and make it as easy as possible. But the rest of the game is pretty irrelevant. It's just easy win for black. King there, checkmate. Okay, so yeah, complicated ending. Both players had their chances that game. There was lots to learn from this game. I hope you enjoyed watching that. I hope you learned something, and see you later.